Obviously, the media landscape has been fractured and decentralized. The same thing has not happened in filmmaking.
We find our truth through
Mm-hmm.
experiencing art. We live in a world, though, that says if your art doesn't look like this, it is unethical, it's bad, it's racist, blah, 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 blah.
I think demystifying some of those topics can actually bring people together in conversation. And that's something that I'm still interested in doing. And it's not necessarily just about one team versus the other.
Especially documentaries about the American way of life.
I just want to see more depictions of real life. I think good documentaries that portray real life are going to become more and more valuable.
I'm Nicole Shanahan. Welcome to Back to the People podcast, which highlights the growth of a movement uniting America, where our government is free from corporate capture and where we give voice back to the American public. Lee Moyer, thank you so much for joining me
Hi.
today on Back to the People podcast. So we met, probably about a year ago. You interviewed me for it was described as a transhumanist AI documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked me some pretty great philosophical questions about AI, and I was happy to respond because, we're in the armpit here of Silicon Valley, and AI is the talk of the town, although I've been doing it for over 10 years. So for me, AI is kind of old news. I'm much more
Right.
interested in a human future. But I think that's the new news. So you're a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. You did Alex Jones's documentary in 2022, Alex's War.
Well, it was my documentary about Alex Jones. Of course, he has many of his own documentaries. And this was more of the outsider perspective.
Why did you pick him as a character? Like, why pick him? I mean, you could have picked anyone to do a documentary on. Why Alex Jones in 2022? At that point, too, he was really being canceled.
Yeah. Well, that had a lot to do with it. I think that the timing is more significant than even my choice of him as a subject, because for me, during that place and that time, he seemed like he was a center of gravity for a lot of things that people were talking about and worried about. And um, it was, of course, during the climax of COVID
Yeah.
that we did that film. And um, people's sort of paranoia, their interest in control.
Because people felt so controlled in 2022. And Alex Jones is really known for being the loudest voice for wanting to be free and
Right.
left alone. But he also calls out the government in ways the government feels really uncomfortable about.
Sure, sure. And at that time, people were starting to talk about censorship a lot more. And there was a lot of interest in rules and breaking the rules and what you were allowed to do and what you weren't allowed to do. And he sort of came to embody the mood of that moment. And that's why I wanted to make the movie about him.
Yeah.
It wasn't really like that I was some lifelong Alex Jones fan, or even that I was coming at it from a way to politically persuade people. The thing that I'm most interested in when I'm making my films is, the mood of the moment and, what are the subjects that I could explore that most embody that moment and what people are thinking about and confronting about it and making sense of what's going on in the world. And to me, people were really interested in him at that time.
Yeah.
He was going on Joe Rogan a lot, and people were sort of using him to like edgelord with like memes and he was becoming such an icon on the internet. And I just um, thought that it was interesting that besides all of that, he had been sort of beating the same drum through the decades.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like reality came and met him where he was at in that moment. And that's why I wanted to make a movie about him then. And even more than being a film about Alex Jones, I really think it's a film about COVID.
Yeah.
we were probably the only people that made a real movie about COVID, that made a real movie about the runway to January 6th and sort of how off the rails the world went during that moment.
Yeah.
So we were working while a lot of people were at home. So I'm very proud of that film, and it was risky for me to make that film.
Really risky. I think anybody who spoke positively, I mean, this was after he said that the school shooting was fake,
Hmm.
and the lawsuit that took him out for a good amount of time.
Right.
And it was, for me, I feel like I'm living in a parallel universe because I believed all of the mainstream media hype. I believed the lawsuit about Alex Jones. To me, characters like Bannon and Alex Jones were these like horrible, deep scabs on America. Like that's the world that I was living in 2022 still. And I feel like I'm living in a parallel universe now where Alex Jones is somehow the good guy. And Steve Bannon might be running for president as a good guy. And it's like really fascinating to me that, you know, these very highly educated people have believed what the mainstream media have said and tried to quiet Alex Jones. And he's really this like horrible, I mean, like some of the adjectives that come to mind is disgusting, red face, loud, yell, scary. My left leaning family member is scary. He's scary,
Hmm.
right? And I honestly felt all of those things, and now I'm living in this parallel universe in which Alex Jones is a good guy. He's tried to have me on a few times. I'd love to go on eventually, but I've heard through the grapevine, he once said, "I'm a national treasure." It's been like really fascinating for me to live in this parallel universe. But then there's folks like yourself and actually the majority of America who are like, how did you not see this all along? And it's folks like you, Alex, that I'm actually most intrigued by right now, who
Yeah.
kind of see it for what it is and really feel passionately about telling the other side of the story in a very intellectual way,
Hmm.
which is like meeting the liberals where they are and meeting these like overeducated, hyped up intellectuals where they are, which the documentary world really is that.
Hmm.
And I've spent some time in the left-wing documentary world. I didn't realize there was a right-wing documentary world, but or I don't call what you do right-wing, but the other side, the other side, the looking at culture
Yeah.
from a different lens than the mainstream is saying it's okay to look at.
Well, there's there's a lot of different ways to make documentary film, and there's a lot of different approaches. And a really popular approach um, in this era is to make a sort of a propaganda film that steers the audience's attitude. And there's some really great kind of propaganda documentaries that have been made. I'm not trying to make propaganda films. I'm just trying to get to the heart of things that I think are sort of interesting, uh, things that people, including myself, have anxiety about, and sort of, um, you know, tackling those things head on. And you said Alex Jones. Now you see him as the good guy, and yes, he may very well be seen as the good guy. But more importantly, he's a guy. He's like a real person that actually exists. That isn't necessarily this caricature
Yeah.
like the one that you're describing. And I think demystifying some of those topics can actually kind of bring people together in conversation, and that's something that I'm still interested in doing. And it's not necessarily just about one team versus the other. Although, if you make a film about someone like him, then you're going to get sort of shuffled away into a category, and you run the risk of marginalizing yourself, which some may argue, I've done by making films about controversial topics.
Yeah, yeah, the other film, that you made, TFW No Girlfriend. TFW stands for the feel when
Mhm.
somebody has no girlfriend. It's just a very big meme, where you take, again, a very different lens on a mainstream narrative. And, look, like, there is like, Hollywood is pumping out a narrative,
Yeah.
and it is a cultural narrative, and it's everywhere. We see it in government policy. We see it in the workforce. We see it in social media influencers who's getting picked up and paid enormous sums of money to do content. And then Hollywood films getting rewritten with new storylines.
Mhm.
And it's a very, very specific narrative, and it really is our, like, it is culture setting. So um, there is a resistance to that, obviously, and part of the resistance is because there's a kind of a darker underbelly underneath what looks shiny and nice and good, and that darker underbelly is kind of the unspeakable stuff that we are all kind of aware is there, but don't know the specifics, but would like to know more.
Mhm.
Um, and, anybody who kind of goes up against the shiny part, the top layer of that Hollywood cultural narrative, really gets lambasted. They get canceled,
Mm.
they get called racist, whatever,
Mhm.
and thrown out of Hollywood.
Mhm.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's going to get you thrown out of Hollywood, Alex. And like,
Well,
yeah,
okay, but
or maybe previously.
well,
Yeah.
ironically, that film was accepted to South by Southwest
Okay.
in 2020, which was the year that South by Southwest was the first major event to be shut down during COVID.
Yeah.
But South by Southwest is, hardly a right wing institution.
No. Yeah.
Um, Way back in 2019, when I made that film, um, and as it was reviewed by all of the curators, the programmers at South by Southwest, nobody was looking at that film and saying this is a right wing film.
Hmm.
It had people in it that were potentially right wing, but not all of the people in the film were right wing. Um, the implicit politics of the film is that it's got young white men in it who spent a lot of time online.
Hmm.
Um, and, looking back, normal everyday people now spend about as much time as those guys were spending online back then.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, I just was interested in exploring, a subculture on the internet and getting to know the people behind, these Twitter accounts uh, that were influencing meme culture, causing some dismay in 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 the circles of in mainstream narratives. And I don't know, I didn't look at it as like a right-wing narrative. I looked at it as a classic story, a coming of age story of people in the modern era, finding their place in the world.
Yeah.
um and that if this was the 90s or the early 2000s, that would be considered a liberal cause. And actually, even a documentary about Alex Jones could be seen as, a liberal exercise. But after COVID happened, and after, you know everything became so polarized and so politicized, um those were seen as sort of right wing efforts. But it wasn't until after the George Floyd summer that people had a problem with TFW No GF. Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
so it's in retrospect, it was shuffled away into that category. But that movie's still a favorite among people from kind of, people who get it. But I was surprised by some of the responses I had to that movie, because I thought that movie came from a place of love and understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's beautifully said. Things that would have been considered liberal causes even 6 years ago
Hmm.
are now untouchable,
Yeah.
right? Because the Hollywood narrative is so narrow right now
Mhm.
that if you're outside of it,
Right.
you're somehow unworthy or irresponsible or unethical. Like, I mean, when I go to look for a movie, it's hard for me to find anything new to watch. Happy Gilmore 2 actually was I was impressed with it. It was really good. It
It was
reminded me of
mellow.
the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminded me of like old stupid comedy.
Yeah.
Um and I really appreciated that. But other than that, it's been hard to find things to watch that aren't full of some form of propaganda. And, I you know, I've now realized the level of propaganda going on in the United States, and I have some awareness of, like, who's behind it all. Um, but, films are art. They are supposed to be art. They're not supposed to be
Mhm.
propaganda. I mean, if they are propaganda, it'd be nice if they were labeled as such. Um but the pursuit of art, the pursuit of truth through art, through the experience of it, we find our truth through
Mhm.
experiencing art, whether it's our own art, somebody else's art. It's this process of creation. Now, we live in a world though that says if your art doesn't look like this, it is unethical, it's bad, it's racist, blah, 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 right? Like, this feels wrong to me,
Right.
this feels scary.
Well, I think a big part of that has to do with the size of the industry of Hollywood and how many people are involved every step of the way, from the lowliest intern to the highest studio executive. In order for something to get made, it has to go through so many different filters, and it's not just about whether somebody perceives offense themselves. It has a lot to do with whether they think their boss or somebody at the streaming platform is going to take offense. It's a panopticon that we're
Mhm.
living in,
Yeah.
because of the internet, obviously. So people can lose their jobs, and people in Hollywood are already frightened about losing their jobs for a number of reasons. Um, so it's it's austerity mode in Hollywood right now, and it's
Yeah.
in fight or flight mode, and that's why you'll continue to see the reboots. You're not going to be seeing as much original IP unless it comes from, one of these designated purveyors like an Ari Aster or a Christopher Nolan, which is great. And there have been some really good films coming out lately, and I also think there's a place for these reboots. But what it signals is um, a yearning for people to return to a time before politics, when there was more of a monoculture, before they had to be so self-conscious, and they have this feeling of they can connect together as an audience watching something like, you know, The Naked Gun. Um, and there's a place for that. There's a place for that. But Hollywood is not going to be taking any risks. Not when you have threats from AI. Not when you have threats from, uh, appeasing people in other countries like China, or how expensive it is to make a film in the United States or in California. Not wanting to run afoul of the homogeny of liberalism in Hollywood. Uh, there's a lot of things that keep them locked in place. That being said, I'm not one of these people that is um, experiencing any Schadenfreude with uh, the problems that are happening in Hollywood. I actually think that Hollywood should be. Uh, we should care about what happens there, because it's
Yeah.
one of the great sources of soft power for the United States, and it helps forge our identity here and in the rest of the world.
No, I think you make a really good point. A failure of Hollywood is a big deal, and a Hollywood that doesn't represent America and American culture and ideals is scary. You know, it's almost like there is a concerted effort to wipe away our Hollywood heritage, which really was based on let's look at, you know, in the example of the documentary world, let's look at this issue from all angles so that we can appreciate each other and this journey we're all on, and especially documentaries about the American way of life, the real American way of life, you know, not the propaganda version, but
Mhm.
like the on the ground reality. You
Yeah.
are living that backlash and you're like, what is this?
Well, as soon as I had something
Yeah.
that succeeded, my success was sort of greeted with kind of like disdain. But the good thing about it was I couldn't be canceled because I went in through the front door, and I've always
Yeah.
been super honest about what I'm doing, and it really is from wanting to not be shy about exploring the cultural moment that we're living in and not be afraid to talk about it, because right now it's personally expensive to me, but later on people are going to be glad that there are movies about what life was like during this time period.
Yeah.
I mean, I've referred to myself as like the first like covidian, maybe the only covidian filmmaker,
Yeah.
because that's sort of the space that I feel like I'm sort of uh destined to kind of inhabit until I go into my next form. But so rather than go on, just to move forward into the present, rather than go around and beg people for money to make another documentary, right? If I'm going to do all of that work, I thought to myself, and I'm going to have to really put myself out there, um, and get, go through, run this gauntlet of find and improvising and finding a new way to do this. Why don't I just start my own company so that I don't have to
Yeah.
keep doing this over and over again?
Yeah.
So when we started this company, my company is called Onset. Um, we wanted to focus first and foremost on developing projects that couldn't be made anywhere else, that reflected the cultural moment, namely the present and the recent past, which not a lot of people are sure how to handle. And they're starting to do it now. But um, through a mutual friend, I got to know you, and you guys have obviously interests in health activism and MAHA, and have had so much success with that. And we all appreciate you very much, by the way,
Oh, thank you.
for doing that. Because it's not easy out there.
It's a whole team of people. I'm
But
just one tiny, tiny, tiny blip in it all, but it's what the people want.
yeah,
Calling all curious minds. Thrill seekers, deep thinkers, debate lovers, story chasers, those who question everything, and those who just love a great read. At Skyhorse Publishing, everything is on the table, and we mean everything. We stand for free thought, bold ideas, and fearless storytelling. Whether it's uncovering the truth, teaching a new skill, or sparking inspiration, we publish books that matter. With 12,000 plus titles in print and 400 more on the way, Skyhorse is one of the most dynamic independent publishers. We challenge the status quo. We bring every perspective to the table, giving readers a place to explore, question, and grow. Want the truth behind the headlines? Read Rand Paul's Deception, The Great COVID Cover-Up. And pull back the curtain on power and public health with RFK Jr.'s The Real Anthony Fauci. Work hard, move fast, have fun, and change lives for the better. That's the Skyhorse way. Go to skyhorsepublishing.com/BTP to learn more. Skyhorse Publishing. Get reading because the sky's the limit.
you wanted to do a film that was a satire around the pharmaceutical industry and potentially around what unfolded during COVID that we all experienced. And I got to thinking, well, who's the best person who can work on this? Who can write a script that's worthy of this topic? And I thought of my good friend Walter Kern.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were magnanimous enough to let him go off and ruminate and decide what the best story is that could be told. And he went off and wrote what's now known as The Rash.
It's really good. I've read it.
Yeah, it's and the script is finished now, and there's a teaser coming soon, and you'll be hearing more about it. Uh, it's one of the films on a slate of films that we have. Again, you mentioned the my technology doc, which is, I think, is more of a long-term project for me. Originally, I had set out to do something with a quick turnaround, but the subject is so vast and there's so much information and there's so much
Well, it's species changing.
unfolding.
Yeah, I mean, this topic is a description of how our species is really going through
Right,
a fork in the road, and it
right.
is headed towards a. I mean, this our species itself might actually
Hmm.
split right now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and so you start pulling at those threads, and you
Well,
start to realize how significant it all is.
you are much deeper in that world, and you've felt to the edges of that world and come back to sort of tell the tale, and you understand the implications of things more profoundly than I do. As an, but that's one of the reasons why why I'm making it a longer term project, is because I really want to figure out what's important and tease out those threads, because there's so many different aspects to what's going on in tech and how it trickles down to impact everybody. And one thing that I'm really interested in exploring is um, the ethos that that animates the mindset of Silicon Valley and how that resonates out to the rest of us. And that's a longer story. And that's a story that's began decades ago, right here.
Oh,
We're
I
right in
know.
the belly of it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say, I have to be honest, without, I have a lot of friends in the tech world, as I'm sure you do. And
Less
some of,
these days.
yeah,
My friends are more farmers and doulas, but these days,
yeah. Well, that's
but I still have tech friends. Yeah.
sure. But without those interactions and those relationships, I mean, it's really impacted my sense of what is possible for my own life. I've gotten a lot of support from people in the tech world when I would find no support in Hollywood.
Hmm.
I mean, I do have some not secret support. It's not, I'm really not that, uh, that I'm not banned from anywhere. It's nothing like that. But I have gotten some support uh, and wisdom from unexpected places. So I guess I'm not agnostic when it comes to AI, but as far as I'm a filmmaker and I'm trying to hear the information and not engage in like cognitive dissonance
Hmm.
so that I can analyze all of that data when I go to put a film together, it serves me better to sort of keep an open mind. And because I want to go out and talk to people. I want to keep
Yeah.
hearing from people. I don't want to like go in with total bias because I want to hear what's going on.
No, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I've become highly biased about AI,
Yeah.
because I have been out and back,
Yeah.
and I've kind of seen where this goes. And my perception is incredibly stubborn now
Hmm.
about it. Whereas 10 years ago, I was like, AI this and AI that. And I had this like incredible language model, and I knew exactly where this was
Right.
going. And then I went deep, and I got to know everybody in the field and look at all the different chips makers and all the different, compute companies that would help you like compute faster for lower expense. Built my own
Right.
machine learning, stations that would be housed in my office, but then I'd have to borrow compute from other places. I mean, so I've played that game,
Yeah.
and And because now we're past the spring of AI. We're in the heat of summer right now
Yeah.
of AI. I'm kind of like, I want no part of it. But I'm glad that somebody with your sensibility is
Right.
keeping an eye on everything, because it's so important to know the actual historic details of what's happening right now.
Right.
Like, it is an all-out arms race
Mhm.
in the United States for what US-based company is going to win the, leading,
Right.
like, golden cap of AI for our nation. And
Right.
there's, in every category, there's only one Apple, right?
Right.
There's only one Google search giant. There's only like one Microsoft word processor. Like, if for AI, especially like general AI or agentic AI, I think that there is going to be a consolidation eventually. But right now, because we're in the heat of summer, it's just
Right.
all out like activity.
It's the gold rush.
It's a gold rush. Yeah.
But it's a gold rush that not everybody can take part in. I mean, even within Silicon Valley, there's a lot of people it's very few people that get to
That gets
control
to
what's
play.
happening.
Mhm.
And by the way, your perspective from what you've done and where you've arrived and your experience is um, is so important because it's critical that there are forces that are acting against each other. And it's critical that there are people who maybe you can call it an AI safety perspective. Um, but I wouldn't even classify you that way. But the fact that you've got all that information and you're making your decisions off of your vast experience, that's a really important voice. And the best outcomes come from when when people are bashing it out.
Mhm.
It can't just be, you know, a green light off into infinity. There need to be people with influence that are willing to ask questions and push back.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's an absolute right for us to be able to choose as humans a life without the involvement of AI.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I've been just fascinated with the Amish, and they have something called the Ordnung. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but it's a code. It's
Hmm.
a set of rules that everyone within that community follows as to what technology is allowed versus what is not allowed, and then there's rules around like use of that technology.
Hmm.
And it's really, really interesting to me because I don't know of any other culture or society or even family that has a built-in code of like what technology is going to be allowed or not allowed. I guess Jehovah's Witnesses do. They don't allow blood transfusion. So that's like very clearly
Right.
written. But, there's very, very few cultures operating within the United States, communities operating within the United States that like expressly write out what is allowed and what is not allowed with some degree of explanation, which
Hmm.
I think is a model that we as society like really have to pay attention to. Um, because there are some technologies that are fine if used in certain ways. And then there are others that like you just really shouldn't be touching. Like especially if you're a child or an adolescent,
Right.
like
Of course.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then from an education standpoint too, it's like what kind of tools are we going to allow teachers to use? Um I even police myself when I use AI to like write a speech or refine sentences in my speech,
Hmm.
or I'm writing a book. Like, how much of this book do I want to rely on AI for? Like,
Hmm.
and it's such an internal struggle because on
Yeah.
one hand it's so convenient,
Right.
and on the other you really have to start to think about what creative what there's a creative opportunity you get through living as a human. What creative opportunities am I forfeiting in exchange for this convenience?
Hmm.
And like this is where it goes into a theology that I'm just not prepared for.
Right.
Um, but I'd like to know more about. And so it'll be interesting. Have you come across in your interviews theologians that have a very clear view on permissible versus impermissible technology? Or
No, I haven't interviewed anybody like that yet, but I think that will be that's a good idea to talk. You mean to talk to somebody that's totally outside of tech that has their own sort of right. Yeah.
like, how do the Amish, I mean, they're very strict, but like, I'd love to see a society, a few degrees removed from the Amish that are doing something similar where they have an Ordnung style
Mhm.
code of permissible versus impermissible technologies that their community can use.
Right. And that's not a problem, and I think that everybody that wants to live that way and has the means to live that way should, but a lot of everyday people are going to get swept up in something that they're not gonna be able to break free of. They're not gonna be able to go live on a Mennonite co-op or something. They're not gonna be they're not even gonna have a frame of reference for life without it. So, when I say I'm agnostic about it, I guess what I mean is I feel very little sense of control about what's happening, and I think maybe wanting to make a film about it is, again, some of my other work, a way to sort of parse out that anxiety, give people something to process that can orient them, um, and not just be overwhelmed by the complexity of the topic, because I think a lot of people are, and
Mhm.
I don't think that there's going to be a real a commercial film that's going to try and do justice to this topic. I think a lot of people in Hollywood don't want to think about AI, talk about AI.
Mhm.
A lot of people are obviously going to lose their jobs, not just in that industry. Um, I think they will eventually come to embrace it when they can find a way to wield it on their own terms, which is, imminent. But for now, they kind of want to ignore it, sandbox themselves from the tech world. I'm a mom too, so I worry about what my son's life is going to be like, and I'm just uh, I'm trying to get zen about it,
Mhm.
because we could slow it down, but yeah, it's things are gonna change, and nobody actually knows what's gonna happen. You know,
I know.
there's no way to know. You can run as many models as you want. I mean, you can, but
What you can hope for, and this, I see this get
some good
tested.
things will come out of it too. I mean, hopefully we can, cure some diseases, make some of our products more safe. That would be good if we had, safer plastics, safer food items, and in a realistic, sustainable way. Uh, and there's 100, and you've worked in fields like that too, and you've obviously, probably helped bring some of those scientists along.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you can make a shelf stabilizer that's
Yeah,
safe. I've invested in a company that does that, and it is all X chemical, um, and engineers, but chemists that were working for like Dow Chemicals, and they were like, we can make this so much better for humans and safer, and so they started a company,
hmm
I believe, called Curry Co. And I was excited to invest in them. So, yeah, I mean, look, AI to me is software.
yeah,
It's a sophisticated software. My concern is when we start doing really stupid anti-human things to get more impressive displays of the AI, and when ego comes into
yeah,
it. And that's true with any tool.
right.
When you add greed, when you add ego, when you add dirty forms, dirty competition and like opposition kind of style competition where it gets very, very dirty, where you like the corporate espionage going on
Yeah.
is crazy right now
Yeah.
in the AI
And
world.
there's a lot of raw energy
Mhm.
right now. Think about what's just, I don't know if you're following the GPT-5 and people's disappointment with it, and their I mean, it's people, they want to see this go as fast as it can.
Mhm. Well,
And if we're
GPT-4 was
not,
such a huge jump.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, I mean, you're not going to have jumps like they had from like 3.5 to 4. Like, you're just not going to, that was a very unusual jump.
yeah.
And it's been years.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, 5 is, you're not going to get the kind of exponential jump as you did to 4.
Yeah.
But there might be. It might be 6 or 7 or 8. We don't know. But to have it every single version is just unrealistic.
How close do you think we are to AGI, in your opinion?
I think I've seen some models that have performed some pretty robust set of AGI tasks. The companions are fascinating.
Yeah.
They are incredibly sophisticated, which is scary to me because what they've done is effectively learned human psychology so well and so in such a personalized way that you're now giving yourself in relationship with a machine. So I think we're there, honestly. And then you pair that with like robotics, or you pair it with agentic capacities, which is where we can really regulate some of this stuff. But the companion AIs, I mean, that's why I'm like, we're in the summer. We're in the summer. This is it. Like, this is the big bang moment. And right now, everybody's battling for what brand, because at some point, it's just like, who's going to own the brand of like having the best AI, right? Just like Microsoft and Word won the brand for word processing. Word is not like in itself that sophisticated of a software product, but it's a brand. It's a very strong brand, and that's what people end up buying. So the technology is all there for very, very sophisticated AI. It's just who's going to win the brand war,
right?
and that's why we're in the corporate espionage timeline, because everyone's trying to knock each other out of like, well, you don't want the AI from that guy, right? Or you don't want the AI from the company who's, I don't know, Coldplay, the executive was at Coldplay, right? Like it's going to get really crazy for a little while. And that's where culture really does play a big role, because like where we are and what we value as a culture is going to pick who becomes the AI king.
Right. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it quite in that way yet. But yeah, the companies are going to have to they already have. They've sort of taken on their own personalities. And, I guess I'm using Grok. And I guess in some way that's a political statement that I'm using Grok and not GPT or Claude.
You can learn a lot about people by which ones they use. I'm not going to say which one I use because, I don't want to but no, I'm mostly using Grok.
I use it for really stupid things, though. I don't really use it for important things quite yet.
I made a cocktail.
Yeah.
I put in the ingredients and it pushed out a cocktail recipe.
Yeah.
But no, I use it for pretty silly things too. I once used it to prep a presentation for a class I taught at Stanford. I was invited to guest lecture. It was not good. I wish I had written it myself, actually.
Yeah.
It was good on its face. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. But then when I was in it personally, I was like, this isn't me.
I don't know who told me this or if I read it somewhere, but you don't really retain the information because the information is cheap. So, you have all of the information of, through the eons at your fingertips, but it's doesn't have any value because you can't even really hang on to it. I don't know.
It doesn't have value because your spirit and soul
Well, you
didn't
didn't work,
create
you didn't
it.
earn it.
You didn't earn it.
Mm-hmm.
And even maybe you earn the capacity to teach the class. If you didn't write the materials are bland. They
Right.
lack spirit. They actually literally lack spirit, right? Because your spirit didn't go into it. The machine did it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where, I'm quite like the human optimist. There's a techno optimist, but I'm kind of like the human spirit optimist that I'm like, people know and can
Yeah.
call BS,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And like that I think is going to be what a lot of human brains are going to be tuned to is like, who are you really? Like, what did you create? What does your spirit create?
Right. Well, I'm hoping that the slop level gets so high and it plateaus to where maybe for the first time in a really long time, people are going to have to get more creative.
Yeah.
And people are going to have to think of new ideas because if the AIs are training on existing knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we'll have to, raise the bar a little bit. One can hope. Um, but, for now, I'm not, the technology as it stands, the consumer technology, I don't, I'm not really blown away by it quite yet.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it'll get there so soon and,
Yeah. I mean, watching people fall in love with their companion AIs though
yeah,
is
that's
something
alarming.
that to me, like love is I don't think it's true love that what these people are feeling. They think it's true love, and maybe it does stimulate a part of the brain that might be true love, but it's, without a spiritual connection, it makes you wonder like what's actually going on there.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's a very big deal. Maybe you're not impressed with it because, you're also somebody who hasn't been impressed with most things most of your life because you're such an independent thinker, right? I mean, the stuff that you've created is so vastly different from anything anybody else has
Yeah.
dared do.
I just wanna see more depictions of real life. It weirdly, I've it even though I'm planning to move on into scripted films, I stumbled into actual job security and making documentaries. I think good documentaries that portray real life are gonna become more and more, valuable.
Yeah.
Uh, there's just no substitute, and I see a lot of
And
documentaries.
documentaries that aren't propaganda.
Well, I think
Yeah.
so occasionally propaganda can make good art. I'm not making propaganda though.
Yeah.
I'm I'm making the propaganda of authenticity. I want to, persuade people to see things as in as as they appear and believe people and take certain things at face value. So it's sort of like anti-propaganda. Uh, and that's what I'm really interested in doing because then people can sort of project themselves and their own conclusions into it. At this point, it's become like a cliche to say that, like, reach your own conclusions. But it is important. It is important. Critical thinking is important. Presenting things in an objective way is important. Um, it doesn't happen a lot anymore. And you don't see a lot of depictions of real life, um, on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all that I'm, trying to preserve. That's my agenda, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the spirit that we started my company Onset. That's what we're trying to do. The rash is represents part of that. It's about this sounds like progressive language, but it's about promoting diversity of perspectives, but really doing it.
But
Really,
actually doing it.
yes, but actually doing
And
it.
not just telling everybody
Right.
with different opinions to shut up that they're that they're non-expert. Well, I'm the only true voice in the room. I mean, I don't know why liberalism went that way, but it is scary and it is wrong, and we have to reclaim.
Because they're worried about
Yeah.
they're worried about it should also be said that they are the ones who are brandishing control over the film industry, and they're worried about social contagion.
Mhm.
And social contagion is real. Um, they don't want people to get the wrong idea.
Yeah.
That something's okay, or like certain, everything's a slippery slope, and intellectual honesty is not necessarily um, a valuable. Is They don't really see that as an asset.
Hmm.
So, but I must say there have been um, more good movies coming out lately.
Mhm. I mean, ultimately, the market will decide, thank God,
Yes,
you know? And the market, like, can sniff out authenticity.
right,
And people really do wanna know if what they're consuming is propaganda to brainwash
right.
them or if it's art. I mean, like, I will tell you when I was watching Happy Gilmore 2, I was on edge. I
Hmm.
was like, "Did they just" "Is Happy Gilmore going to be this, like, completely washed thing that it and,
Hmm.
like, is the old Happy Gilmore gonna be gone?" And I was, because it's a classic, you know? It's a classic. You don't wanna mess with a classic, and it actually still retains so much of its edginess from the '90s,
Hmm.
and they just kinda did what you get the sense that they kinda just did what they
And they
wanted to
put
do.
John Daly in the movie the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's the vibe shift for you.
That is a
Uh,
vibe shift.
yeah, yeah. There's another thing that I want to say, which is um, there. Obviously, the media landscape has been fractured and decentralized. The same thing has not happened in filmmaking.
Mhm.
Um, and it is good that some of these, some of these, uh, there's been an opening up to, and a softening in terms of strictness around these ideologies, and you see that with even something like Eddington, uh, or even Honora in its sheer lack of politics, and then going to win the Academy Award. So there is a thawing out, and there is there is a light at the end of the tunnel for people being able to take risk and make creative films again. Um, but I feel like it's so far down the road, and part of what I'm trying to do and what we're trying to do with this company is usher that in sooner and catch up with this decentralized media landscape, and do it now while we're in the moment, and
Mhm.
making films and shepherding films along that reflect uh, the cultural moment and isn't so um, out of touch, and we can only be part of it, but that's all. I think it's so important, and the Rash will be a part of it, and our other film, The Technologists, will be a part of that,
I cannot
and
wait to watch The
and
Rash.
yeah,
I really can't. I mean, I need to be able to look back at what happened during this dystopian period in human history and laugh,
right.
right? Because that might signal that we've moved on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just tying in these worlds of the internet, and people who are people are consuming content. I mean, I don't want them to be consuming content. I want to actually create things that have a longer shelf life. When's the last time you went back and listened to a podcast again? You don't.
I don't.
So,
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can do a little bit to step into that niche, because a lot of
Mhm.
people are going to be trying to do that. Um, it's obvious that that's the next thing that's going to happen.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know if it'll be our company or if it'll be some other company, but it can't just be the monolith of like any good movie that comes out is only made by A24 or Neon or
Mhm.
something like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I- we're kind of the only ones who have already done it. So
Yeah.
I think it should get interesting, and I'm hoping that, um, yeah. And thanks for your help. and helping to get their rash off the ground, because I
Oh, we
think
just
people are
had
really
this.
going to love it.
We just had that stupid idea, Jacob and I, one day, and we were like, wouldn't
Yeah.
it be great if we could just laugh about how ridiculous this all was and how awful it all was, but also laugh at it because that means that it's in the past, you
Well,
know?
it also reminds me a lot
Yeah.
of, and I know that Jacob's a huge fan of like 70s like conspiracy thrillers.
Yeah,
Um,
yes.
and it's a little bit part Doctor Strangelove,
Yeah,
part network. And then, yeah, some of the lighter influences from the films in the 90s.
totally.
Wag the Dog, Thank You for Smoking.
Hmm.
Um, we need to be able to sort of have a sense of humor about
How
our collective
disastrous.
trauma.
Our collective trauma. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for everything you've done and have really you learned things as I did kind of the hard ways,
Girl,
thinking you're doing one
it's
thing and
tough
then
out there.
and then being told you're this awful person by a small segment of the community,
Well,
but still like background being patted on the back. It's all very confusing.
yeah, and I don't go on a lot of podcasts, and I don't really come out of my shell. I've been very nose to the grindstone, but I wanted to come and do this with you because I really identify with you, and you're stepping out and taking a lot of heat, and it felt like you're the right person to talk to about these topics. So
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't wait to work together with you more.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on.